Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome to episode 10, Blindsided Podcast. In this episode, we are talking about the not so little voice in our head, that inner critic. And we're going to work on unpacking the origin of this and, what activates it. And I'm just going to say three things that areas we're going to talk in. And that is noticing when, paying attention to, and preparing for. Hi, I'm Charlie Collins. I am a speaker, a coach, co founder of Thriving Blind Academy. And Brenda?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for that intro, Charlie. My name is Brenda. I'm founder of timeforattend.com, and we are a coaching service. We help people challenge their conditioned thinking. In turn, that changes their reality and it helps them manage their emotions much better. It all equates to freedom. And today we are so excited to have Sue on. Hi, Sue.
Hi, everybody. Oh, God, wonderful introductions. I didn't come with anything nearly so eloquent. I am Sue Pepper. I am a coach. I've been coaching for many years, and I am co-founder of Time for Attend. So I get to work with Brenda. What a gift. And yeah, what a great topic. Looking forward to hearing more about it.
All right, good. Well, I like to start off with a story, but I'm also going to give us a little room, as we like to do, and open us up here. All right. So back in like 2006, I went on a trip I started reading books about self esteem and, taking a look at like how I thought about myself. And first of all, I never knew, right? I never knew that there was a thing called personal and professional development. I didn't learn that in school and I didn't know. So I don't know. Somehow it started to happen. I started reading The Aladdin Factor and different books and waking something up inside of me. And I decided to travel all the way to California and go to a conference and sit in a room and learn about developing, about taking more risk in things. And I went and I was scared. I don't know I have an inner critic. I don't know that I give power to something in me that then triggers other parts of me that build a case of why I shouldn't do and all that. So I don't know any of this. And I go and first day was great. And it was Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and he was with someone else. First day I'm sitting right in front of the stage going, wow, I was blown away. I was a kid in a candy store. And second day, you come back and you had to get a badge, right? Your name badge. But the first day you go in, they handed it to me. Second day, they had them out on a table. And I walked up and I said, oh no. And I'm legally blind. So that inner critic came to and he said, what are you doing here? You can't even find your own badge. And I was too afraid that I had to get real close scanning the table. Why didn't these losers put them in alphabetical order? What am I doing here? I'm not as good as these. I mean, it activated and it went nuts. And I was like, I'm going home. I was ready to walk back to my room and probably just watch TV and sit there and feel sorry for myself and give up. And I didn't. I said, okay, let me just ask. Somebody came walking up. Excuse me, could you help me find my name badge? I forgot my glasses in my room. I lied. And they said, sure, oh, here it is, no problem. I'm like, that wasn't too hard. So I went in, but on the way in, I happened to bump into Jack Canfield, like the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy. And I said, oh my God, nice to meet you. And I told him the story, like, why? Well, he called me out in the conference. He said, hey, someone bring the microphone to Charlie? I'm like, and I think he's looking in my direction. And I'm really starting to think there better be a lot of Charlies around me because he better not. And so what happened was it was me. And he said, stand up, and they handed me a microphone. I could feel my legs and shaking. And it was 300. I mean, it felt like 3 million, but 300 people in the room behind me. And they're all looking at me, I know. And they're all thinking about me and not good because, that's just how my brain worked. And he said, tell them what you told me. And I'm like, what? That was private. Why would I tell everybody that? And so I said, well, I mean, he goes, okay. And how long have you been letting that inner critic? And I'm like, what's an inner critic? Besides, I don't like you anymore. How long have you been letting that run the show and dominate and base your decisions out of that critic that tells you you're not good enough? And I'm like, oh my God. He said, well, stop doing it. You need to go back through your life and find out when. And I am like, how does this guy is brilliant. And that was the birthing of, for me, of starting to take an honest and fearless look at this inner child, this inner critic that wanted to dominate me moving forward in life.
Wow.
What a great story, Charlie. That's a really good story. Really, it really resonated with me. And you know what you bring up is that the inner critic, the inner child, is born early on. Like for me and my family, you know, if either one of my parents were upset or they were mad at me, my safety was questionable. It was questionable whether or not I was going to be safe. And the other thing was, I found growing up that if I did really well in school or really well in sports, if I was achieving in some way, that also equated to safety because my parents were proud of me. So I was receiving love at those times. So those two inner critics, when someone is upset with me, I feel really unsafe, or I did for a long time. It's much better now because I've done a lot of work around it. And the same thing holds true when I don't do well, or I don't master something, or I make a mistake. Even the inner critic kicks in. And what you really shined a light on here was that it starts really, really early. And it wasn't until adulthood, when I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, I was in enough pain, where I started to pay attention to it. How about you, Sue?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, it's so funny because I had less of the fear of my parents. There was always a little bit of that. But what I think I just learned from the people around me. You know, I realized a few years ago, my mother lives with me in the summer now, since my father passed away. And one day she was walking around and she made a mistake and she was like, oh, dummy, dummy, dummy. She's calling herself a dummy. And it was that moment that I realized that when I make a mistake, I immediately think to myself, what an idiot, you know? And I don't think I had ever realized that. I think this is why, you know, for me, when it is a young thing, when it is something that happens so early, it is so normal that, you know, I don't even know there's another way to be. You know, that for me is the norm. And so it is so entrenched. And that's why when Brenda and I, we talk a lot about awareness. And man, that's the first step, just being aware of it.
Yeah, that's excellent. I can relate to the entrenched. Like, wait, there's another way. Holy, how come that didn't come to me? Because it doesn't, but it will, and it can when we notice when we pay attention to, and then we will talk a bit at how we prepare for. And I had a look like, was it my parents? No. Was it my diagnosis of a very rare eye condition and the fear of living life as a blind person? Yeah, that started an area. But for me, it was school a lot, and it was, what would do teachers in the school system? At least when I went, I'm sure it's pretty similar. Their job was to find out what was wrong and then tell me. And it had red on the paper. So a teacher's mindset was when they correct papers, they're only looking for what's wrong. They never were looking for what's right with me. They never came to me and celebrated the answers that were correct. They only said, this is where you're wrong, and this is what we got to focus on. So they wanted to focus on my weaknesses. And I built a very deep inner critic from my years in school.
And you know what's interesting about that, Charlie? On the other side of the spectrum lies the same problem. So I did really well in school and really well in sports, but anytime I made a mistake or I didn't come in first or I didn't get an A, which was often, by the way, because nobody's perfect, and I certainly wasn't perfect, the inner critic would kick in. You're not good enough. And it's the same message. And it's so interesting to hear two different stories where I didn't do well and there was an inner critic. And guess what? I did really well. And the inner critic was just as loud. I loved what Sue said about it being normal, because for me, it was learned behavior. I learned it from the people around me. I took it in, I made it true. And I learned it from the people around me. It became my truth, but it really isn't the truth. Sue and I had a great conversation last night about your truth.
Yeah, well, for me, oh gosh, I'm like you, Brenda. I did really well in school, and I was that person that was always seeking perfection. Where do we get that from? Where does that come from? I don't feel like I didn't have a lot of harsh punishment if I didn't do well. What I had was the opposite, which was when I did well, I was lovable. It meant something about me, to achieve equaled love somehow in my head, and so was that my parents' intention? Gosh, no. Was that the intention of Charlie's teachers? No way. So where did that message get mixed up in my head that this meant that, if I wasn't perfect, then I was a failure? It's this black and white. There are no colors in the middle. It's only black and white. I am either getting straight A's and I am the best at what I'm doing, or I'm a failure. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, no middle road. I can relate to that. What the middle road's boring anyway. And I would do a conference. I spoke for a good few years to teachers, and it was my time to get even. And but no, I'm kidding. It was always maximize your environment, maximize your classroom for success with your students. And it was all different. I just renamed it the same one at different events. But anyway, I would do a bunch of different slides, but one of them I would say 139 and 139 13 15, and I'd flash the numbers up on the screen, and then I would boom. Then they would come up when I said it, and then they would disappear. And then I put a question: what's missing? And boy, did that activate them! Like they were hungry to answer. They were the odd numbers. Mm-hmm. And then somebody would catch that I didn't say 13, and I only went from 11 to 15. And I said, what happens if there's nothing missing? Everything is just right the way it was. And you don't ask yourself that question and they were like, huh? It was awesome because I had to learn that. Why am I always looking for what's missing and what's wrong? When do I start looking for what's right? When I start paying attention to, or actually when I stop giving attention to my critic, to the one that wants to pull me back to the missing, the wrong, the poor me, and the one that says, in every car there's a battery. And what is on each of those posts? A positive and a negative. But I need the critic at times. It helps wake me up to something that maybe I'm not seeing, but that's on the other side of me believing the lie that the critic should take over and I should listen to him or her.
So true, Charlie. You bring up some really good points. What happens to our authentic self? What happened to the idea that each and every one of us, and I'm just going to say as an expression of God, power greater than yourself, universe, nature, whatever you want to call that higher self, each one of us is a unique expression of that. Not all of us are supposed to be straight A students. Not all of us are supposed to be athletes. We're not supposed to be perfect. We come completely as we were intended to be. I didn't learn that until much later in life. I spent all that time, trying to really improve the things that I was told were weaknesses in me. There's a whole slew of studies, and there's a whole institute out there. It's called the VIA Institute. And you take this test and it gives you what your strengths are. And by focusing on what you're good at, what your strengths are, they've proven that the weaknesses, they're not even weaknesses, it's just how you're built. They improve organically without you having to do anything, by just focusing on what your strengths are. And strengths are things like love, compassion, empathy, spirituality, forgiveness. It's heart-based strengths.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You know, there's a Strengths Finder is it's a whole book, and it helps people to get at what their strengths are and to focus on them. I come from a background of corporate training, a lot of leadership development, and so that was a really great tool for leadership development in the workplace. You know, but wow, you're bringing to mind also the way I learned to deal with my inner critic. A few years ago, what I recognized is my inner critic is actually trying to help. You know, like Charlie's teachers, you know, she's pointing out something because she thinks, and I refer to my inner voices as she because I identify as she, and quite frankly, I think they're all aspects of me. So this inner critic, what she's trying to do is she's trying to help me to see what I can do to be perfect, because she mistakenly believes if I'm perfect, then no one will criticize, no one else will judge me, no one else will hurt me, everyone will think that I'm okay, I will be lovable, right? And so that constant critic, what she's trying to do is help. She's just not very good at it. There are better ways to help. And what I love is when I recognize my inner critic is not a bad voice, she's just a misguided voice, then I can start making that transition to listening to a better voice, or even bringing her along and teaching her how to be a better voice. You know, it's all of this going inward and working on, how do I talk to me?
Yeah. I mean, we all focus. Well, I shouldn't say we all focus, but the big thing in all the gyms is exercise. Well, our gym is inner size.
Love that.
And I believe that is that will serve you in a much better way than just having nice biceps. But anyway, I one of the areas I learned was back in seventh grade. We're playing now. I'm declared legally blind at age 13, whatever grade that is. But anyway, I remember I'm in gym class, and shortly before I got the certificate of blindness from the state. So now the whole state knows I'm a loser. So things are going great in my life, and I know there's no future. Everything's going to suck. I'm never going to drive a car. So I might not be. And of course, I'm keeping that within. Would I share that with you? Heck no. And in gym class, we were playing dodgeball, and they picked two captains. And of course, they were the two cool people. Of course, everyone was better than me. And anyway, but I got picked last for the team. And that, of course, I could throw a ball, but I could not see it well coming at me. And I got out quick. And that, because I took that personal, that is not my strength, dodgeball, but it should be, because in this moment, people are watching me and I need to perform well so they like me. And I couldn't. And I failed miserably. So through my life, when it came time to be on a team or get picked or have an employer, I hated it because I kept my head down. I had two buddies that lived. Actually, both of them lived on a road, Beacon Hill, but we won't talk about that. But and I would hang out with them every day after school, and I'd wait at my house for them to call me because they should pick me, bring me into the thing. And I realized I used to get so worked up, and I might call eventually. What are you guys doing? We're hanging out. What are you doing? I'm waiting for you to invite me. Well, you don't need to be invited. Of course, they didn't say it this way. Just come down and hang out. Why are you so freaking nervous and worried about? And because they weren't. Well, I realized that I carried this all the way up until I did the work, because I realized when I was in a situation and I said, I gotta look at this critic. Why? Okay, when did I first remember this feeling? And it came to me when I looked inside and I asked. Remember in gym class when you got, oh, and I carried that hurt, that bit of trauma, that unresolved part of me, that critic stayed alive until I finally squashed him.
Mm. It's a powerful story, Charlie. What popped up for me when you were telling that story, and Sue knows about this story. So, you know, there's a saying that goes, it's in one of my prayer books that says, stop waiting for somebody to bring you flowers, just plant your own garden. And I loved that. And it really resonated with me. I remember for my 40th birthday, I was in a relationship and I said to him like 3 months earlier, I really want a 40th birthday party. I want a surprise party. I'm one of these people that I've thrown dozens of surprise parties for friends and family. And I'm just one of those people. I love doing that kind of stuff. And my 40th birthday came and went without a surprise party. And I was upset about it, right? I was waiting for him to do something I wanted for myself. So when I turned 60, I didn't hesitate pulling together a party for myself. And I invited all the people that are in my inner circle that I really love. I did a separate party for family and a separate party for friends that are in my inner circle. And that party was so incredibly meaningful and touching and beautiful for me. And I made it happen because I wanted it to happen. I didn't wait for somebody to do that for me. I didn't define my value by whether or not somebody was going to do that for me. I went ahead and did it for myself because I have a relationship with myself today as a result of working on taming that inner critic that allows me to do that without having any negative feelings about it. And it was incredibly beautiful. And it was, for me, spiritually expanding.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Oh, I think you guys have both told really great stories about inner healing of yourself. And I think that's what you called it inner size, Charlie. And to me, that's what the inner size is. All too often, what my critic is just it's the voice that I think, it's the voice of should. You use the word should, Charlie, and it's that big old hammer that I beat the heck out of myself with. I should be this, I should be this, I should be this. But when I stop and recognize, wait a minute, what's really going on here behind the critic? The critic is trying to protect me, to help me, to save me. She thinks if she makes me perfect, then nobody will judge me. Well, wait a minute. What's really important here? What's really important is that I look to heal myself. Both of you had these experiences where, wait a minute, I'm not going to wait for someone on the outside to do something. I'm going to do something that is loving and healing for me. All too often for me, the inner critic comes from what I think other people will think of me.
Yes.
And if I go inward and I think, wow, how about I take a minute to heal? Because what's really going on is shame. I am ashamed that somebody else thinks that I'm an idiot or I made a big mistake that I shouldn't have made. I'm feeling shame. How do I heal that shame? And I can choose to go inward and do some inner size that I can talk to myself, wow, yeah, that's really scary. That really, sounds like, you really think everybody thinks you're just a loser or something. And the truth is, you made a mistake. And how can we move forward from here? Just recognizing, you know what? I can make mistakes and I can choose to do something differently next time. Or maybe I can just allow myself to not be perfect and maybe I can laugh it off. And maybe I can just recognize when somebody else makes a mistake and help them to feel like, yep, no big deal. Let's just laugh it off. These are all the kinds of inner sizes that we get to do, all of the things that you've mentioned and this too. So.
Yeah, well, I love it. And there's power in accepting of mistakes and not being perfect. It's freedom from that bondage that I was living in. It's like I make mistakes, I like them now. It's like, hey, I don't wake up and go, can't wait to make mistakes today, but I reached for something, I knocked the glass over. That would send me, oh, and it's like I knocked the glass over. That's why they make towels. I mean, it just kind of comes together. It's no big deal. I would like to go back, and I went back to that little boy in seventh grade, and I put himself in that gym, and I said, now I reframed it. I thought about it. Am I competitive? Yes. I like to give it my all in a running race and trying in school. I was. And so if I had been picked as the captain of the team, I would have picked me last too, because no offense, buddy, I want to win. And you're not, you're kind of a weak link, but you're a strong link in many other areas. But in this area is an area where, and then I went, I can accept that. I'm fine with that now. And it's like, if I was Drew, because I resented him too for years. Silly. But anyways, I learned that too by inner. And I just went back and I reframed the whole thing, and I came at peace, and it's like, and I could laugh at it. It's like, now that one's off the table. And thank you, Critic, for coming back again and showing me another area. I need to add a little pounds to that inner size.
Oh, that's fantastic. Charlie, can I use inner size on a video, please, and talk about it? I love it.
Well, seeing that I opened my mouth without copywriting, yes. Things come to me, and
it's beautiful.
that's that higher self, that power greater than me that helps, and that trumps my inner critic.
Yeah.
It does. I love that. Both of you said something really important, and that is, when we start to understand, when we pause and become aware, like you said in the beginning, just start being aware that there is a voice in here, and it is not for your highest good, really. It's there to help, but it's not saying it in a nice way. You get to know that voice. You get to validate and nurture that voice. Hear it. One of the ways to heal from it is to hear it. Give it space to express itself. Hear what it has to say. And if it's an inner child, if it's an old injury, an old trauma, an old memory that's creating that inner voice, validate it, comfort it. And then as you do that and it starts to heal, you can laugh at it and say, no, that's just old stuff. You can challenge its reality. And I'm calling it it's really a part of me. And then when you start doing that for yourself, just like Sue said, you can laugh at other people. Now you're not judging and blaming other people when they fall short. And that has given me so much freedom, because my head used to be full of judgment and blame and criticism, because we can't give what we don't have. And the way that we treat ourselves is the way we're going to treat the world, whether we realize it or not. I'm more likely to be upset at the grocery store with someone who's not doing what I want so I can get out of the store when my inner critic is screaming. When it's not, I go in the grocery store and I get done when I get done.
Oh, wow. What a great piece of wisdom there. We treat others the way we treat ourselves. A few years ago, I had one of those inspiration moments, that you both talked about. And it was this inspiration that I didn't know how to be compassionate for myself. I thought the harder I was on myself, the better I would become.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, as we've been talking about, that's not really how it works. And so I started trying to and working on developing compassion for myself. And just the way you described, reframing, like Charlie said, going back and reframing and saying, you know what? You just were who you were. And I love inner child work. I love somebody introduced inner child work to me a few years ago. And I love now going back and talking to my inner child with compassion. But I had to learn to do that. The very first conversation I had with my inner child, I remember it was the very beginning of the pandemic. And I was all anxious. And I was like, this is crazy. Why am I anxious? And so somebody recommended talk to your inner child. And the first thing I said to my inner child was, you're fine. There's nothing wrong here. We're going to be fine. It's all going to be good. Guess what? That's not compassion. That was the exact opposite. That was actually judgment. And let me tell you, as soon as my words were going on in my head, my inner child, I mean, I immediately felt tight all over. It was not a feeling of relief. And so I had to learn how to speak with compassion to, as Brenda said, really listen to that voice. And the way I started was just, going inward and saying to myself, I hear you. Yep, this is scary. You know what? I don't know what's going to happen. And that's a really scary situation. I hear you. And that for me was the start of compassion, just stopping telling somebody, me, what to feel and think, and instead just listen to what they're feeling and thinking with compassion.
Yeah, not a strength of mine for a long time, compassion. There was this emotional or getting emotional, which was basically crying or sharing that something's difficult was not. You're not tough if you do that. So especially boys don't do that. They fight, and then they never, and it's like, how, and that guy, that critic of me, hung on tight. But you said, and that's what I didn't know. Instead of beating myself up for, I'm going back to the dodgeball. I said, I get it. I would have reacted that way too, without knowing the truth that it's okay to feel. See, I fought feel. I don't, since I feel this way, it's wrong. I'm wrong, and I'm stupid, and so is everyone else. So instead of going, I welcome it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel this way. And why? Or how can I just sit with this? What are you trying to teach me? And I can then just work through this stuff and not battle it, because battling it is, it seems the victor only seems to win. I don't, because it comes back when, Susie at the flower store. Oh, Brendan, I just want to say, thank you for that. And I'm only kidding, because I'm sure Molly's going to hear this. My wife, hun, you haven't gotten me flowers in a long time. I'd say, well, go plant some. Probably not a good, not a good way. I'll say, that's what Brenda said.
I'm so sorry, Molly. I'm so sorry. I want to take a second and say good morning to all the people on the chat. It's great to have you here. Thank you for coming to our podcast. Oh. And, you said something important, Charlie, and that is, I didn't want to feel. I vividly remember not wanting to, stuffing my emotions, not holding space for them, shoving the tears down when I was feeling them coming up, because I thought that to feel, if I allowed myself room to feel, I was going to feel everything that I'd been stuffing for my entire life. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to keep pretending none of this is happening, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. Do. And I'm still pretty guilty of being really active, doing a lot instead of being a lot. I'm working hard to get at the being more state. And what I found in doing this work, and I was really surprised, is that my body, my spirit, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, knows what it's doing. And the feelings come up for release and review and holding space at my body and inner higher self's pace. So they don't come up all at once. It's amazing how the body and the mind works to modulate, giving you only what you can handle. And so in the work, I found that to be true, that when I decided I wanted to become emotionally aware, I wanted to do this work so that I can enjoy the freedom that I'm starting to enjoy now. And I made that commitment, and I trusted and relied on that the inner size was going to work the way it's supposed to work, not the way I envisioned it working. And it actually happened. It was miraculous for me and transformative and life-changing.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, you reminded me of something. I heard somebody not too long ago say something to the effect of, our emotions are like children. You can't let them drive the car, but you can't shove them in the trunk, and I love that, because that imagery helps me so much. When I try to shove my emotions in the trunk, when I try not to feel hurt or shame, when I shove it down, the longer I shove it down, the more explosive it's going to be when it finally comes out, and then it's driving the car and I have no control, and I'm having a temper tantrum, or I'm having an argument with somebody, and that's not healthy behavior for me today. So I love the idea of befriending our emotions. And the truth is, for me, my inner children really are my emotions. My criticism is really, she's just hiding shame, and fear, and so when I befriend my emotions, it's really about recognizing them a lot earlier. I grew up in a family, Charlie, it's not just guys, I'm afraid, that shut down the emotions. In our family, it was not acceptable to show emotions, and Sue was the emotional one, and I would get the eye roll. Oh God, there goes Sue again. So I learned, shove it down, shove it down, shove it down, and so as an adult, I have had to relearn when I'm feeling an emotion and what that emotion is. It was amazing to me how completely clueless I was about what emotion I was feeling. People would ask me what emotion I'm having. Anger. Oh, what emotion are you having now? Anger. Oh, what are we yesterday? Anger. That all I was allowed was anger, because anger was an acceptable emotion in my family. A lot of people were angry, but nobody was hurt. Nobody was afraid, and I needed to recognize that those were the real emotions going on underneath my anger. I needed to be aware of them, and I needed to befriend them, I guess is the word, but it's really deal with them in a loving, compassionate way before they became anger. Because by the time they became anger, they had been there for a long, long time.
So I'm going to pause here just for a second. Sue, that was beautiful. And just give a couple of shout outs here. So Molly says, I buy mine, Charlie.
Good for you, Molly.
And Trish is saying, copyright that. It's intellectual property, Charlie.
Oh, there you go. So, inner size.
We have someone talking about taming the inner critic, how helpful it is to heal this. Compliments on the battery analogy, Charlie. And more thanks for the tips. Sue said something, I'll be quick, I promise, Charlie. Sue said something about shoving the emotions down. And one of the things that happens when we do that, we don't even realize it's happening, is it comes out in our behavior. And so one of the things that we do at Time for a 10 is we target the disturbances that a person has in their daily life, because the disturbances that they're having in their daily life is a reflection of their conditioned thinking. It's a reflection of the emotions that they're stuffing down, even if it's a small disturbance. And eventually we peel the onion and get at the exact nature of what's driving those behaviors that are causing them unhappiness. So I just felt the need to pop that in before it flies out of my head. Thanks, Charlie.
So, Brenda, are you open to talk about something you just said a little?
Yes.
Okay. You said, I'll be quick, Charlie. Where did that come from?
It came from my perfectionism, my inner critic that says, we're taking turns here. Don't you go out of turn. That's rude. That's selfish. beautiful, Charlie. That's the inner voice that I wasn't even paying attention to. Which,
because I have not said to you, Brenda, you really got to curb your sharing sessions because you're going 3 seconds over, and that's pissing me off.
but this brings up a great point. I'm so glad this happened. This is beautiful. So I carry a thought journal, right? And what I do, it's a spontaneous thought journal. It's just like, the cops carry the little pads, and I keep it in my pocket or my pocketbook. And occasionally, like a couple times a day, I'll just stop and write down whatever's going on in my noggin because I'm not paying attention to it. And I can't tell you how many times, and I was shocked when I first started doing it. I started doing it for a paper at school, and then I kept the practice up. I can't tell you how many times what's coming out on that piece of paper spontaneously is the inner critic, like it just did. Spontaneous thought journaling.
It's funny. I started this whole conversation by saying, I didn't prepare anything nearly so eloquent. There you go. That's my inner critic,
Yeah, you're
Scared that,
setting
oh
this
gosh,
stage.
I'm not going to be as good as these other people, That's what she does. She hides fear.
Yeah. So I just want to emphasize again, there's different spectrums. There's, it's like, oh, I'm worse off, and I'm not. Just that world of, because there's people that the inner critic, like you two, I think, you thrived and you achieved, but eventually it caught up to you. But it drove a good friend of mine to become a orthopedic surgeon and be the best in his college and medical school, but it caught up to him eventually. You can't feed that critic well enough for long enough. He's going to need new substances, or you need to shut him off. And I don't have the tools, so I have a new tool, but it's not a sustaining tool. And then there's those who recognize and honor it and give it and love it, give it their attention, let them know, yeah, you are important in my life, and I'm gonna take that feedback and apply it and grow from that. Okay, that is not me. I had to learn that way of thinking, acting, and living to get the results I get now. But, like we always notice, just simple, hey, we're the experts. We're on a podcast, and we do it. Like, I'm not going to lie. When Brenda went, I'm like, that's out of turn.
I knew it. I knew it.
I know you did. She's not following my rule.
So instead of, I hate my inner critic, or gosh, I love my inner critic and I can't wait to learn from it, right? There's the middle ground, which is just be curious about it. Oh. Just be curious about it. Be an owl. Just be curious.
Yeah. There's a path to healing for all of this, and there's probably thousands of paths to healing. But for me, the path to healing has been, being aware of it. And then the curiosity kicks in. What is behind that critical comment, And then how do I go to heal that which is behind the critical comment? Because what my inner critic then becomes is just a red flag. All she is she's waving a flag. Whoa, something's going on here. Because like I said, I grew up not in touch with those emotions. And so when my little inner critic is talking in my head, it's a red flag for what's the emotion that needs healing here? What are you feeling not good enough about? And how can you spend some time healing that feeling? And there are so many paths to healing. We've talked about the inner child work. I love inner child work. I have really grown to appreciate it so much and use it so often. But the other thing that I think is so helpful is just having a group of loving cohorts that you can just say, me too. And I think that's the value of podcasts. You hear other people talking about it and you go, oh, it's not just me. I'm not crazy, I'm not bad, I'm not wrong. I am human. And there's so much healing in that. And that's why I love these kind of podcasts. And that's why I love doing coaching is, the more you work with people, the more you get to hear them say, "Oh, you mean I'm not crazy? I'm not bad. I'm not broken." God, that was the word I always applied to myself. I was broken. No, no, you're not any of those things. You're human and you're just like us. And we're all that way on the inside. And it's really, it's safe. There are safe places to talk about it. So love that.
Mm, excellent. That was great. Yeah, I know. And when I learned I wasn't alone, that scared me in a way because that means I can't go down the path of I'm a victim. And this is I'm crippled with fear and all these problems, and I know there's nothing that can be done about it. I've tried. And but then I sat and started hearing people talk. I'm like, oh, you mean I'm not alone? And that means, oh, I can do something about it. That scared me in the beginning. But we've said this. We were all born with something higher than ourselves, something that drives. It's a power. It's a spiritual energy. It's God. It's universe. It's nature. But until I stop denying that and allowing that to nurture and speak to it, them, whatever inside of me, I realized I was born with it, but it got blocked with pomp, calamity, with resentment, with critic, believing the critic, going, "You're right," and then levels of it got blocked. So I just chip away at this stuff and I shine a light. That's why I named my book Tripping into the Light. I didn't trip into the light. I did a lot of tripping. We won't talk more about that right now, but this is why just coming together into a community, hiring a coach, doing something, because going at it alone, it's just for some weird reason, the critic, the ego, the lower self, the negative part of the battery seem to take over.
Yeah.
Mhm. I agree with that 100%. You were both saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And we've said it on other podcasts, like a conditioned brain can't fix a conditioned brain. And Sue was talking about being broken. My belief system was broken. That's the only thing that was broken in me was my belief system. And I couldn't fix that with my belief system. So I had to engage the help of others that were like-minded on the same journey, people that have gotten to the other side of some of these challenges so that they could show me the way. It's just like forging a new path. We don't do it with one shovel. We do it with 50, and we forge a new path together and we learn from each other. And that supportive community that we belong to is just incredible. And we've built the same kind of thing on Time for 10 as a supportive community where we can all learn together and support each other as we, nurture, listen to, become aware of, right? And then heal that inner critic.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think too, I'm just gonna jump onto what you both have been talking about, which is redirecting to something, inward and better, and for me, higher power, whatever that higher power may be, is such it's the voice that I have to go finding inside of me. I no longer seek it on the outside. And I when I work with people, I try to redirect them inward, 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 because along with that inner critic inside of me is a deeper inner voice. And she's a quieter voice. I often explain it as, imagine you're standing in a room and across the room from you is this oh so loving and kind person, and she wants nothing but good for you. Oh man, she is so in your corner, and she's whispering, wow, amazing, wonderful things to you, but standing between me and this wonderful person are these screamers. And the screamers for me are fear and anger and judgment and criticism. And the whisperer for me is something bigger than me. Call it true self, call it your soul, call it your inner connection to God, call it, so many things you could call it. But that whisperer, she always speaks to me in soft, gentle ways. And if I'm full of screamers in my head, I can never hear her. And so I have to kind of do a lot of inner size to calm the screaming voices so that I can hear her. And what she tells me is usually, that's your truth, or yeah, that's not your truth. And those are the words she says to me. And she doesn't tell me what's right for everyone else in the world. And she doesn't tell me that there's an ultimate right and this is it. No, she just tells me what is my truth or what's not my truth. And that's been a real powerful aha for me. And such a healing place to continue to go to.
Excellent. Well,
Wow.
let me your needs are just as important as my needs, and my needs are just as important as your needs. And and that's something I had to start visiting and talking to myself about, that I am worthy. I deserve a good life, but I got to work towards it. I don't Life is not fair. I don't deserve things to happen automatically, and I should have it good cuz I have a disease in my eye. So this I should have gotten things easier. No. I am a business coach, and every time I coach people, I want to make more money. I want to climb the ladder. Great. Time to exercise. Because it's not the manager, it's not the marketing department, it's not the shipping department, it's you. But I will help you see the pathway, because there are many pathways to success. But I will help discover with your guidance how maybe this pathway will help you climb that ladder of more peace of mind, more contentment, and money. But if money's the problem, money is not the solution. It's that I had to learn. Woohoo! But anyway, I just wanted to bring it close to an end. I don't want to stuff, if you guys have any last minute things, but it's like, wow, it just landed when Sue ended. Like, I think it feels like we're landing the plane.
Are landing the plane. Sue nailed the ending. It's perfect. It's a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Oh, I got to say hi to Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Sorry.
Hello, Carrie.
I would say hi to Carrie. I'll give Carrie a wave. Carrie, Trish, Mom.
So let me just explain that we're on several platforms, people, and there could be people on Twitter, on LinkedIn, there could be people on Facebook, YouTube, and then there could be people on Brenda's where she streamed it. So we don't know exactly, and there's stuff going on in areas but the beautiful thing is that this is recorded, and we can rewatch this recording. But we'd like to ask you to I just laugh at what I create sometimes, but like this on the platform you're on, if you received value. That arrow, for those of you that can see it, that means send it to somebody, not to fix them, because we know that doesn't work, but send it that you would just like to share this, and subscribe to whatever platform you're receiving this on. And most importantly, come back next Saturday at 9:30 a.m.
We'll be here. Thank you so much, Sue.
Oh, thank you both. This was a joy. This was a real joy.
All right. We'll see you guys on the fly.
Hey, Marshall. Bye, Marshall.
Hey, Marshall. Goodbye.